Welcome back to my channel. I'm Traben, and it's that time once again to do the mid-year book freakout tag. Last year was the first year that I started up being a booktuber. The mid-year freakout tag was like my second video. It was a lot of fun to jump into these creator spaces and to participate in something that is so widespread and so beloved. It's also a good opportunity to kind of pause partway through the year and think about, look back on the things that I've read so far this year. What kind of reading journey am I having so far? How is it going? And kind of check in for myself as well. Last year I read 365 books. That was my goal for a book a day. This year I'm toning it down to a 200 book goal. Currently I am 24 books ahead of schedule with that goal, having read 115 books. That is of course a mixture of manga, graphic novels, and novels. For most of these categories I am going to try to give a book recommendation or a book that stood out to me in this category and a comic that stood out to me in this category. I am always trying to bridge that gap and show that manga and graphic novels are just as legitimate reading as anything else you find on the shelf. We're going to start off with question number one. What is the best book I've read so far this year? And for novels, I'm going to give it to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. This one just hit so many good beats for me. It is what I would call cozy fantasy. It's low stakes. Yes, it gets into a bit of like higher fae politics, but it's all within this isolated community on the outskirts, on the fringes of society. So on a larger scale, this is not like a global catastrophe. This is not like embroiled in a multinational war, anything like that. It does really come down to the characters, and the characters in the story are so fun and so engaging and so quirky that I just loved every moment of it. My partner is currently reading through this. This was a selection that she picked up and I just happened to read first. And so she is sharing with me all the moments that she is enjoying, and we are discussing my thoughts on this. I do have a review for this up if you want to hear more. I will link down in the comments all the reviews for books that I mention in the video. So go check those out if you are new to the channel or if you want to get more information about any of the ones that I've done a deeper dive on. My number one manga of this year so far is Chainsaw Man Volume 3. Currently doing a manga tournament where I picked 16 different volume 1s to read through, and we've been doing elimination, bracket style elimination. We're in the finals. It should be up soon. I know I keep saying that, but I really do want to have that up the day after this video releases or the following day. This volume I mentioned in the review was the first that I really had to stop and not pick something up because the end was so shocking and affected me emotionally more than I was expecting it to. If your only familiarity with Chainsaw Man is like YouTube videos, how cool a guy made of chainsaws is, you are missing out on the excellent character development that goes into this book as well. The world building is very solid, characterization is very solid. It was easily the best shonen series I read in the tournament, and it continues to impress volume after volume. But volume 3 was, for me, the single best manga that I read, or single best comic that I read this year. Now we're moving on to the best sequel. Again, we'll do a book and a comic. Best book is going to go to Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson. This is a sequel to Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, which was a whodunit with this fourth wall breaking protagonist where he is a character in the story, but also a writer writing about the story after the fact and recounting his experiences, talking about the tropes of a whodunit novel or whodunit writing, and mixing those expectations up with the story and intertwining those in a very fun way. Everyone on the Train is a Suspect, for me, was an even stronger book than the original. Everyone on This Train is a Suspect, I really did feel like I could follow the story and figure out a lot of things about what was happening, and I really appreciated that in a whodunit. With the first book, I felt like it was still a little bit too convoluted to figure everything out. One that's definitely worth checking out and a lot of fun to read. Best comic book sequel, I'm going with the relaunch of Miss Marvel, The New Mutant. This is written by Aman Vellani, the actress that portrays Miss Marvel in the TV show and the Marvels movie, and is well known to be a very big Marvel fan and a very big Miss Marvel fan. I waited on this one until it came out in trade. I was very concerned with where they were taking the character, but I think that this is not only a good introduction to the character, there's a lot they've done to kind of reset the status quo to where it's easier to jump on, but also an excellent continuation of the story written by someone who clearly has a love and appreciation for the content that has come before and is drawing from that to tell this new story. I still worry about the corporate meddling with this, as I do with any mainstream comic book, but so far it has been strong, and the follow-up to this one is also going well. I'm getting that one in singles. If you are a fan of Miss Marvel, if you're a fan of just young superhero comics, this is a good one to start with. I would still say that if you're wanting to pick up Miss Marvel, you go with the original release, the original series, but this one is probably a close second. Highly recommend that one for the superhero fans. Biggest anticipated new release, or a new release that you haven't gotten to yet. I feel like I've been doing a pretty good job tackling my new releases as they come out, but this week Paul Tremblay's horror movie was released, and I have yet to pick that up. I am highly anticipating that. I listened to a short story collection by Paul Tremblay. I don't think I've ever gotten through one of his novels before. I am interested in seeing particularly this story. I read Silver Nitrate earlier this year. I'm really hoping for another great horror story based around the movie industry and that culture, because it was a lot of fun in Silver Nitrate. Question number 4 is, what is your most anticipated release for later this year? Later this month, Somna comes out, and this is a horror comic that has been getting a lot of buzz. The print size is one thing that's been pointed out. The artist has been highlighted in a number of places as just like gorgeous art, and the story has been hyped a lot from the comic book community, and so I'm really excited to get my hands on it and read this story for myself. Late this year, A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping is going to come out, which is another one of these cozy fantasy stories. Again, I'm really in that genre right now. I really liked the author's previous title, which was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. So this is going to be a romance for sure, and have magical elements to it. She did a really good job on her first outing in creating a story that was engaging and fun, and a relationship that worked hand in hand with the plot. So I am anticipating that one. Also coming up later this year is Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive number 5. The only reason why that's held back a little bit more is because I have yet to read books 3 or 4. I am currently working through those and hope to get through them this summer. So that's why that's a close second. Question number 5 is, what has been the biggest disappointment for you this year? The number 1 book that has been a disappointment has been Infinity Sun, for a number of reasons. So this was a book club book for my students at school. It was one that we voted on last year to get into our collection. I did put it in 3rd place of the 3 books we were offered. So I will say that I did not feel like they needed another straight high fantasy novel, but it was also just personally disappointing. The author is the same person who wrote They Both Die at the End, and I feel like he took the writing style of that book and just thought that it would he could extrapolate it and apply it to a fantasy setting, and it caused a number of problems. So They Both Die at the End is very character focused, it's very character driven, it is very much like slice of life every day, and so there's not a lot of world building you have to worry about. You don't have to worry about describing a whole lot of the locations that characters get to. For example, in a fantasy novel, that becomes a really big problem. It also was in first person from multiple perspectives, so it bounces back and forth between two brothers, but also these minor background characters get chapters, and it's always first person, which I feel was very confusing and was echoed by my students as well. So a disappointment for me as a reader, a disappointment that is an option I gave my students as a teacher. Honestly, I don't feel like most of the people who were in those groups really enjoyed it. I think the most I got was that they thought it was okay. I'm putting as an honorable mention for novels There's No Way I'd Die First, which surprisingly became very pro-capitalist and very like anti the 99%. It was super weird, and also involved a scene where the killer clown pooped inside of the main character's very nice handbag. I don't know what to say about that one. Its only saving grace was that it eventually became amusing to hate on it as I read it. It became amusing how terrible it was. For manga, I'd have to say my most disappointing read has been Demon Slayer #1. I do feel like Demon Slayer gets stronger somewhere down the line. It has to, for its massive popularity to be sustaining it. But volume 1 was just so boring. There's not a lot happening in here. The action scenes, the fight scenes are not rendered very well compared to other shonen series that were being released at the same time. And so, yeah, I know that this is massively popular, and again, I'm sure as it develops, much like Beastars, when I started reading Beastars, I felt like the art was not very strong, but it very quickly elevated, very quickly got better. I'm sure the same is true for Demon Slayer. Unfortunately, I am probably not going to find out because I found the first volume so weak that I don't really want to follow up with another volume. Get in the comments, let me know if I'm terribly wrong about that, if it's amazing later on. You can tell me all about it down in the comments. Question number 6 is, what is your biggest surprise for 2024? Biggest surprise comic book wise was reading through Look Back and reading through Goodbye Eri and finding out that the author of Chainsaw Man is the author of these two. It's surprising the way that he's able to pull off these slice of life stories, these very character driven stories, not just straight dramas. Look Back deals with time in a very interesting way, and Goodbye Eri works with the medium of film and interprets that into a manga to great effect. And both of these were amazing. Both of them were a lot of fun to read and very engaging, very moving in their depictions of these friendships and these relationships. And it's just surprising that it's coming from the author of Chainsaw Man, because again, if you only have a passing familiarity with Chainsaw Man, you just see like, oh, big dumb guy with chainsaws, action, blood, gore, all that stuff. There's a very shrewd mind at work behind these comics. Someone who's very adept not only with the comic book medium, the manga medium, but others as well, and able to incorporate those and use them to tell very compelling stories. If you are not a fan of Chainsaw Man, if you don't want to see a man made of chainsaws slicing up people, maybe check out Look Back, check out Goodbye Eri. These are very compelling, character-driven stories. I highly recommend both. For biggest surprise in books, I'm going to give that to Mushroom Blues by Adrian M. Gibson. I heard about this through Daniel Green's channel. One of his wrap-ups or his weekly news reports was talking about this and talking about fungal punk, which is the subgenre that this is creating and is now part of, where there are fungus people, there's a fungus society, and I was like, that's just so quirky and weird and out there that I need to pick this book up. Like, that probably would have been enough to just have the quirky, fun, haha, oh, these are mushroom people, isn't that cool? This entire book is like allegorical for post-World War II occupation of Japan. not what I was expecting at all from this book. Also, like a legitimately good detective noir fiction story. And so because it gave so much more, like it did give me the fungal punk crazy world, wild ideas with like fungus buildings and a whole fungus city. It gave me all that, and it gave me so much more. So if you've not checked it out, if that sounds cool to you, know that this is also backed up by a very good story, and compelling characters as well, with a lot of look on racism and intolerance through the lens of someone who is intolerant, and not just like a savior for these people, which is, I feel like, our common go-to when we're trying to tell those kinds of stories. All right, favorite new author was a little bit difficult because so much of what I'm reading this year is from authors that I already know, or from YA authors that I'm just getting introduced to. I feel like the strongest titles I pick up are already from writers and creators that I was familiar with. I really wanted to put Daniel Warren Johnson on here because I've been consuming so much of his stuff this year, but I read Do a Powerbomb last year, so I could not count it. So Heather Fawcett is going to be our author of the year, our most favorite author. I am so looking forward to reading the sequel to this book. I really want to wait until it's in the paperback with a similar cover style, because I really like this cover style, and I really like the like uneven edges they did on this copy. As a bibliophile, I've got that thing where I want all my books to match. Mismatched books are the worst, and so I know it's out there, I know it's available, but it's not available in the format I want, and so I've got to wait, and I hate waiting because it was so good and I want to continue the story. So Heather Fawcett is my novel author for the year. Comic author, I'm going to go with Peach Momoko. So Peach Momoko is currently putting out the Ultimate X-Men story. I knew Peach Momoko was a comic book artist, and I did gravitate toward that art in covers, alternate covers, and things that she did in the past. But this year was the first year that I read stories written by her and drawn by her, including Demon Days and Demon Wars, and now the Ultimate X-Men comic. All three blend the established Marvel Universe with Japanese folklore, Japanese legends, ideas about yokai and things like that, like the Japanese demons, and put it together in such a way that you get those feelings of reading a classic comic book, but told in a wholly original and very engaging story that is reinterpreting Japanese lore. So with Demon Days and Demon Wars, it's more on the lore side, like it's more retellings of Japanese fables through the lens of Marvel characters. With Ultimate X-Men, I feel like it's the coming together of the X-Men with that Japanese flavor and that Japanese society. There are cultural notes on the backs of these comics. And I think for that alone, like, it's worth looking into, just because it's such an interesting take, and they're taking the time to explain it and educate their readership on why these things are showing up if they're not familiar with that culture. And if you're not aware, I did spend 2 years in Japan teaching, so Japanese culture has always been something that has been interesting to me. It's also something I'm now very nostalgic for my time living there. So that's a very good way to hook me into a story if it's done well, and Peach Momoko is probably the best at doing it in comic book form. I'm not going to elaborate on this one too much because it's the third time that it's showing up in the list, but we have the question of who is your new favorite book crush, and I'm once again going to go with Emily Wilde from Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairy. Emily Wilde is a very quirky, very bookish character. She's hyper fixated on fairy. I can understand being hyper fixated on things. She's just super cute, the way that she goes about doing things, the way she reacts to other people who are maybe a little bit more what we would consider normal, and the way that she has to navigate her relationship with Wendell Bamblebee, who is the love interest of the story. It's all just really cute and engaging and fun, and I really was taken by the character and enjoyed all the quirkiness that this book had to offer. So the next question is, book that made you cry. And I want to preface this by just explaining that it's very easy for a book to make me cry. I get very emotional, especially when things deal with family and found family. This is almost certainly not the last book that did this, but I can still remember the reason why was Kaiju Battlefield Surgeon. That's right. So for those who don't know, this is a Matt Dinneman book. He writes the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, which is gaining traction. And this one is another, like, kind of, not isekai, but like where you get trapped in a video game and the video game is for real and he has to navigate, like, learning the video game mechanics and get out of there before he dies. It's that kind of story. You know the kind of story. There's a character in here that you're introduced to very early on that you gradually grow attached to. I don't want to give any spoilers. But you gradually grow attached to them, and then toward the end of the book, they're doing the whole, like, oh, if you leave this world, then what's going to happen to me? And do I really exist? Am I real? And I don't know, like, it's a very long book. It's a very thick book, as you can tell. I had spent so much time with these characters, and, like, so much time, their relationship building up, that when this character that you are very attached to starts talking about, like, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to die? Are you going to remember me? Am I even real? I started getting choked up. Probably not actually the last book that made me cry, but the last book I can remember why it did. Next question is, what book made you happy? For novels this year, or novellas, we're going to go with Brandon Sanderson's Edge Dancer. This is Stormlight Archive 2.5. It follows a young thief named Lift as she is navigating getting these powers. The character is so free in a way that is both incredibly real somehow, but also plays against a lot of tropes. If you are a, I think, 13-year-old thief, and you suddenly gain the power to become frictionless. Also climb. You have a little helper that can help you climb up walls and things like that. Would you become the savior of the world? No, probably not. You would just start stealing stuff better, which is exactly what Lift does. Lift is an excellent thief because she's using the powers that were given to her ostensibly to help the world and to save it. And she's just like, nah, you know, I like thieving a lot. I like stealing people's food specifically because I'm hungry. And it's just so funny. So to give you an idea of the kind of humor in this book, at one point she goes to this new city and she's talking to her little assistant character. She's got this, like, sprite basically. And they're talking about, oh, like, why didn't you, well, if you're hungry, we don't have to steal food. You can just use the money they gave you in the last town to buy food. And Lift's like, I didn't bring that money. I left that money there. And he's like, why would you do that? Well, if you have money, then people steal from you. So the best way to avoid being set upon by thieves is just to not have money. So let's go steal some food. And that's the kind of thing that happens in this book, and it's just so amusing and so funny. Comic books that made me happy, I gotta go with Serial. I have a review for this one for sure. Serial is a gothic horror graphic novel in the vein of, like, early Universal monster movies, starring the cereal mascots from like the 90s, I want to say like 80s and 90s maybe. So like think like Count Chocula, Boo Berry, Frankenberry, Fruit Brute, if you remember Fruit Brute. They are all in here. That would have been enough. And like you throw in some puns, you say like, oh, it's magically delicious. And I'm like, haha, that's what he said in the commercials. But then like they were like, no, we're going to go hard on this one. And like, it's going to be a meditation on cowardice and living forever and hypocrisy and what it means to be a strong leader. And what do you do when you're facing overwhelming odds? And it's going to end very depressingly for a lot of characters, and bittersweet for others. And we're going to play it completely straight. We're going to play this like a car wreck. But also, we're still giving you the puns. So it just made me so happy that it was like giving me both of those things. So like you could laugh at the jokes and you could be like, oh yeah, I remember this weird mascot that no one's ever talked about since, that they threw in there. You can enjoy that the toucan is always making rhymes about the violence that's happening around him. And also have a very compelling, grounded story. Like it's got a lot of pathos in it. So yeah, highly recommend Serial, and it's a one-off. Like it's a one and done. You read Serial and you're finished. You've got the most beautiful book that I bought this year. I did back the Kickstarter, the Sanderson Kickstarter for the second Stormlight Archive book. And when I did that, I believe that's when I went ahead and purchased this first leather-bound set of Stormlight Archives. So it splits the book into 2 volumes because having a hardcover like leather bound of this size would be absolutely absurd. Gold edges. You've got this insert art in here. Beautiful color map at the beginning. Art, high quality production, and it looks great on the shelf. And yeah, it's the most beautiful book that I've bought this year. It might be the most beautiful book in my collection, full stop. Second last question is, what books do you need to read for the remainder of the year? My 24 for 24, and then also I want to read through a lot of my epic series and get caught up to current with them because I'm behind in a lot of those. I set up 24 books in 2024 that I wanted to read, and so far I've read through a little over half. That list includes The Poisons We Drink, How to Solve Your Own Murder, The Reappearance of Rachel Price, A Crane Among Wolves, One Perfect Couple, Horror Movie, The Man in the Macintosh Suit, Festival of Shadows, Flick, and then Somno. I was really trying to look through and see like, okay, what's getting released this year? What am I most excited about? What are some things that have recently been released, like sometime in 2023 that I hadn't gotten to? And I tried to compile a list that way. So I really do want to get through all of those. Next priority from that is I want to read through the Dresden Files series, get caught up with the Stormlight Archives, read Mistborn Era 2, read the Prospero War series, and read Lightbringer. Several epic fantasy series that I want to get caught up to current so that I am ready for those new releases. Gabby over at Gabby Reads added an extra question to the Freakout tag, which is, what is your favorite manga so far this year? And I want to take this opportunity to encourage you to look up my manga tournament and see how that's going. Look at those videos. I'm down to the last 2 now, so it's either going to be Chainsaw Man or Witch Hat Atelier. The comic that wins that competition, that is the best thing that I've read this year as far as manga is concerned. But that's going to do it for the mid-year Freakout tag for this year. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help us grow this corner of our BookTube community. I really do like hearing the feedback from people who watch my videos. I like engaging with you guys down in the comments. So if there's anything I said that you agree with, anything I said that you disagree with, anything you want to follow up with, please reach out to me, let me know. I hope your year is going well. I hope your reading journey is going well and you are finding books that make you laugh or cry or are just beautiful. Whatever it is you're looking for in the books that you pick up. Until the next one, take care.